Thank you, Scott. It's now my pleasure to kick off the ARF conference and letting you know that you'll be hearing from a true game changer. Wendy Clark was recently named Ad Age's 2017 Executive of the Year for reinventing the agency model. She is also the recipient of the New York Women in Communications Matrix Award in 2014. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you, Wendy Clark, the CEO of DDB North America and formerly the head of the sparkling beverage category and strategic marketing organization at Coca-Cola. Welcome.
This girl is on fire. This girl is on fire.
Well, good morning. Thank you. I have no clue why I'm here either. You all are infinitely more talented and knowledgeable in the space of research than I am. But I think that I'm here to tell you that the agencies get it, and hopefully show you a little bit about how we at DDB are getting after it a little bit. I think we have a tremendous amount of work to do, but that we're here and that the agency community can very much be part of the discussion with you. So. Jed, thank you for that introduction. Rachel, thank you for the invitation. And Scott, what a fantastic way to kick off. I really found Scott's words palpable. They speak to me. Our clients are awash in data. I think we do have some very specific and critical crises that we need to take on. And I like the idea that we don't get so caught up in our own points of view that we look for data simply to support our points of view, instead of take a much broader and unbiased view. And I think it's often very challenging to do that. So where am I going to start today? Well, I'm going to start with a very profound statement. And you're thinking, I got up early for these 6 words. Thank you, Wendy Clark. I think that all of our jobs are to manage the present and invent the future. And while these 6 words do feel sort of self-evident, I think when we step back for a second and think about what this thing called the present is, right? It's all the brands, it's all the content, it's all the conversation, it's real time, it's 24/7, it is unyielding, it is always changing. And so the marketplace, the landscape is constantly shifting beneath all of us. And yet, as leaders in the industry, as we're getting our arms around this thing called the present, we are actually also supposed to lift up and look out and invent the future, right? And when you put these two ideas together, this becomes not just 6 words on a page. This becomes incredibly difficult to do exceptionally well. So let's talk about this thing called the present a little bit. Always putting out data and information in front of people. I have sourced all my slides, but roughly 7 billion people in the world, you can see over half of those now unique mobile users, right? 3.5 billion just about internet users, and then 2.3 on social networks. So a very interconnected world that we live in. If we just take a snapshot of every minute in that world, every minute of every day, you can see 150 emails are sent every minute of every day, right? I think most of those are in my inbox. Maybe a few of them are in yours. Look at WhatsApp. WhatsApp, a platform now with 21 million WhatsApp messages every minute. I mean, that platform didn't even exist 5 years ago, right? So we've got these very young platforms with a tremendous amount of traffic and engagement. YouTube videos watched, Google searches, let's keep going. How about 1 million Tinder swipes every minute of every day? 1 million Tinder swipes. Tinder was not around 5 years ago, right? The engagement has. Facebook logins, Snapchat photos, tweets. How about Netflix hours watched, or even Uber rides? 1,500 Uber rides every minute of every day. Maybe that's declining lately. We'll see what we can do for them. So how are brands and companies responding? Right? Because this is a very different landscape. Well, this was talked about a lot last year at the World Economic Forum, certainly picked up on this year. But the currency of business now is speed. Speed is a horizontal impact for all companies and all brands. So it's not just about their communications and their marketing. It's about speed to market through their distribution. It's about speed to market through their production. It's about meeting their consumers in the moment that they want to be engaged with across any part of their enterprise. It's a horizontal impact for our clients. So, in the age-old axiom of good, fast, and cheap, forever as a client, and I've spent most of my career as a client-side marketer, I was told I could pick two. I could have it fast and good, I could have it good and cheap, I could have fast and cheap, but I could never have all three. And I can tell you with confidence, after 15 months on my new job, every single one of my clients is saying yes, yes, and yes. I want great content, I want it at the speed of the marketplace, and yes, I want it at an efficient price. Cheap kind of hurts our feelings, so we have to say efficient. So, if you will accept with me that the world has changed, that brands are changing, we had to reflect and say, what are the agencies doing? Are we really keeping pace with the marketplace and what brand marketers need? Because I would suggest to you that the days of clients force-fitting into fixed agency models is over. It is entirely over. And that's what we were staring down. I think that's what every agency is staring down. It's what we had to come to terms with. Now, it's clear then that our processes, that our people, that our approaches have to be as dynamic as this marketplace. There is no room for those fixed models anymore. I quote Sun Tzu a lot, the ancient Chinese warrior, the author of The Art of War, and this was a great and palpable quote for me as I was thinking about how DDB and the 17 offices that I lead in North America, what change they had to get after. And what I take from this is, it's not always about the same change, right? So do not repeat the tactics which have gained you one victory, but let your methods be regulated by the infinite variety of circumstances. The infinite variety of circumstances. All that is to say, back to the previous quote, the days of force-fitting into fixed models are over. We have to meet every one of our clients where they are and with what their business needs and create solutions for them through the variety of capabilities and skills and operating approaches that we have. Now, when it comes to data, to Scott's point, we are awash in big data. Our clients are. They are challenged with it. When I was at Coke, I had the very same feeling. I had infinite amount of data, but I didn't know quite what to do with it, especially when it came to advertising. There were certainly things I knew how to operate and use my data with, but when it came to my advertising agencies, honestly, it felt like we were in two separate worlds. You know, my advertising would be done in one place, and then we'd go, oh, we should probably put the data together. So let's kind of clash it together and see if it connects, right? There are two things that I want to talk to you about in terms of what our lessons were and are in data use and how we will carry forward. Number one, data is not a proxy for decision making. And I think that there are still some brand marketers out there who will subjugate their decision to the data rather than take the data as a decision point, as an input point, and then let our intellectual and our human minds make the decision. But used correctly, data can help fuel better decisions. So it's about getting that in the right order. Number two, data can indeed kill creativity when it is used in the wrong way and at the wrong time. However, used as intelligence to build sharper briefs, data enables brilliant and better creativity. And I could give you at least 10 examples from our own agency network of work and creativity and therefore business impact and outcomes that were made better through beautiful use of data, insight, and research. So we are not at odds. I do not subscribe to people in my part of the industry who say that data is somehow limiting and squelching creativity. It is only when it is used in the wrong way that data does not fuel and make creativity better. So I came today with two examples from our client base to talk about. The first one is State Farm. State Farm is our longest standing client. We have been working with State Farm since the 1930s. You don't hear about relationships like that. Keith Reinhardt, our chairman emeritus, in fact wrote Like a Good Neighbor, State Farm is there. And he wrote the jingle with, bonus question, anyone know what famous music? Yeah, where are you? Barry Manilow. Bonus DDB swag for you coming later. Barry Manilow and Keith Reinhardt wrote Like a Good Neighbor jingle in the 70s. Incredible. So we've had a long-standing relationship with this amazing client in Bloomington, Illinois. But our ambition for State Farm was to rise above the category. I mean, I think if you look across the category of insurance and as they expand into banking and other services, it was very much a sea of sameness. There weren't many differences. While I think the creative and the work was great, we were all saying the same thing. We're here for you when things aren't quite right. You can trust us like a good neighbor, right? You get the metaphor. So we went about the process that we do, right, which had a lot to do with ethnographic research, qualitative and quantitative research. We engaged and spent real time with thousands and thousands of agents in the field. We did MRI and Simmons clusters, and we even developed microclusters. I mean, it was an exhaustive set of research and analysis that the team went under. And as we understood the pillars of where we were for State Farm, there was an apathy culturally that we had to accept and that we had to acknowledge being in the insurance, a low interest category, right? A low interest category engaging in a world that has apathy was a challenge for us, right? We had to stare that down. But that apathy could be taken on by the fact that there are thousands and thousands of State Farm agents on the ground in your market, right? This isn't an amorphous idea. You know and see your State Farm agents, and they can help you pass that apathy, and a lot of times they do. And we also had to understand that the consumer was heavily connected, and so that when we did that, and when we addressed that apathy, and when we unleashed it, it became actionable, right? And it became this empathy in action, and that was what State Farm could stand for. So as I said, we did the MRI and Simmons clusters and microcluster analysis. The most important thing we did in that process was move from simply who and what to who, what, and how. I think how is one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves now in a marketplace that moves in real time with infinite connection points and ways to reach consumers. To Scott's point around engagement, we have to ask how in order to make sure that we're investing correctly and reaching those consumers when and how they want to be reached with the message. Perhaps the most profound outcome of this entire exercise was taking on our own work, which you don't often hear agencies do. We love taking on other people's work. We don't really like taking on our own work because we think our own work's pretty great. That's why we did it. But we had to take on this storied line and understand that actually, given the marketplace, given the connectivity of the consumer, given the realities of a real-time marketplace, that it wasn't about State Farm being there, but rather here, right? Like a good neighbor, State Farm is here to help life go right. A complete 180 on our own positioning. The same message from the same company, but rather than saying we're there when things go wrong, how about we're here to help things go right? How about a 180 lens on the very same proposition? Incredibly brave of that client to stare that down. And the rest is history. I'll show you one of the spots that hopefully you've seen by now. Here we go.
What if an insurance company wasn't only there when things went wrong? Because for every tornado, there's a twister. For every crash, an even bigger collision. For every robbery, a heart that's been stolen. For every fire, a dozen flames. And for every tailspin, well, tailspins. State Farm understands that getting the most out of life doesn't just mean being there when things go completely wrong. It's about being here. Here. And here. In all of life's moments. When things go perfectly right.
Thank you. I get to stand up here and take credit for work that I had nothing to do with, but I hire great people. Maybe that's the credit I get. An incredibly different switch, right? That happened last June. We just completely flipped about suggesting that could an insurance company be here to help your life go the way you want it to. A remarkable and profound campaign that has had infinite results, and all of this driven off deep, deep research, analytics, and insight that led us to understand that we could get there, that this was a category-breaking idea and therefore a category-defining idea. And you can see some of the results here. These are publicly issued results, but across their portfolio from life insurance to homeowners insurance to even added bank accounts, and then their consideration also up. Very good results so far. Now, let me move on to another example. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. This is our largest client, McDonald's, by a long shot. And last April 25th, to be exact, because it's emblazoned in my mind, we received a 4-inch RFP. It was about that thick. And it didn't go to me. It didn't go to my boss, Chuck Breimer. It went to my boss's boss, John Wren. This was a very serious exercise that McDonald's was undertaking, and in their RFP, this is their language. McDonald's wishes to create a new, more effective and efficient agency ecosystem. An agency ecosystem. Hadn't heard that word before, right? Blah, 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 blah. You can see what they're looking for. And so, inside this RFP was what the scope would include: strategy and innovation, market deliverables, one-to-one deliverables, merchandising deliverables, production support deliverables, basically everything. This was from Super Bowl to tweet to in-store digital menu boards to Ronald McDonald House to employee communications. It was just about everything. The only thing not included was PR from their long-standing relationship with Golan, but just about everything else was in this. And what an opportunity if you're an agency and you've been begging to have control over every touch point so that you can really drive their business, right? This incredible and amazing opportunity for a client we had had a relationship since 1971. Not quite as long as State Farm, but 46 years, I happen to know because I was born in that year. So for the next 120 days, we did a lot. We had 18 significant meetings with the client. There were 19 Omnicom agencies involved, thousands of people, hundreds is probably underestimated, 3,000 pages of content that we presented or submitted to them. We had to create an entirely new operating model. We answered 5 creative briefs. We had infinite talent and chemistry meetings. And we had to, of course, negotiate. And the outcome worked out for us, but that's what I want to tell you about, because I think this should give you some confidence as the research community that the agencies around you get it, or we're at least starting to get it. Because we had to ask ourselves a question, given this brief, this blank canvas, to create anything we wanted. What would we create from scratch if we had the opportunity? Well, we knew what we would not create. We didn't want to create something around the client's organization because those are dynamic and those are changing, right? That doesn't make sense. We didn't want to look at just typical agency infrastructure. I mean, we could have done a DDB 2.0. Didn't feel very imaginative and certainly didn't feel right for the scope and scale of this brief. And we really didn't want to rely on legacy models that were out there. In fact, we didn't want to build an agency for McDonald's. The insight that we came upon in the process of responding to this RFP was that we wanted to build an agency for the people that we wanted to come to McDonald's. An interesting way to think about building your agency. What if we built our agency around McDonald's consumers? What if everything we did allowed us to attract them for our client? And again, meeting our clients where their business is and working back to us. No more force-fitting into fixed models. So we created a new agency. It's called We Are Unlimited. It is from 120 days of pitching and great PowerPoint, it is now a reality in Chicago. It's a 225-person agency at the 225 Michigan building. It is thriving, it is prospering, it is creating great work. And I'm there almost every other week, and it is fantastic. Now let me tell you about We Are Unlimited. What was different about it? Well, we started with data. We started with intelligence. Again, among my greatest frustrations as a brand marketer was not knowing how to use all this intelligence and insight I had on my consumer with my advertising agencies. They simply weren't set up to handle it, and yet I knew it could unleash creativity if we used it in the right way. So we are marketers, so we call our intelligence center the Cortex, because it has to have a name. But we created the Cortex, right? And we worked with Sparks and Honey and Analect, and I know some of those team members may be in the room, and certainly Jed used to work at Analect. Incredible agency partners at Omnicom. And what they helped us do is understand how and when to use the data, how to structure it and make it useful for the agency. So we created the Cortex. The Cortex is a combination of open data from Analect, so whether that's media or human behavioral data or purchase data from McDonald's. They've got 20 million people have their app. I mean, they've got tons and tons of fingerprints on their business that we can port into the context. So all of their data, we combine that with Sparks and Honey's cultural foresight, and we create an always-on, real-time intelligence engine that's at the heart of the agency. And when I say at the heart of the agency, they are physically sitting at the heart of the agency. We were demonstrable in the role that this was going to play. So that the marketing scientists and the data scientists aren't often closed, dark rooms in the corner of the agency. They physically sit in the very center of the open space of the agency to underscore how serious we are about the use of this intelligence that we have. We knew that with the ability to have fully addressable media through the power of McDonald's, all the touch points that McDonald's has, the engagement through the app, the 27 million people who come through their stores every day in the US, that we could take, if we could build an agency model that could move from the creation of content into addressable media and blend that together, that we could get to something called mass personalization. And that was the challenge as we took this intelligence and as we created an agency structure. Again, this is based on Analect and Sparks and Honey's understanding of human behavior, that human behavior happens in micro moments that become macro stories and that might become megatrends. For us then interpreting that into that content to get to how that content would work in addressable media, we then had to set ourselves up for real-time, fast twitch capabilities for micro. So think about hours and days of development. Longer form editorial narrative, think about days to weeks in terms of production. And then still our tentpole campaigns are still going to have planned big events like a Big Mac event or something else coming up that we're working on right now. And those would be in terms of weeks and months. But the agency could no longer operate on a single mode. The agency now operates in 3 modes: micro, macro, mega, and it lights up differently, and different capabilities are recruited, and different people work on that. It's not, we don't lean towards a tweet the same way we would lean towards a Super Bowl spot. Those days are over. That did not reflect McDonald's marketing environment, and it certainly didn't reflect their consumers' mindset, understanding these micro moments, macro stories, and mega trends in the way that consumers were living their lives. So this is the operating model. Here's the black box. You're seeing it live and real. Get your cameras out. But this is the operating model of the agency, right? So from left to right, there are triggers, both planned and unplanned. So they've got calendar events still. They've got things that they plan, but there are also competitive moves they can't plan. They've got to react to. There's also business questions. Why are Big Mac sales down in Wichita, Kansas at 2 p.m.? I don't know, but the Cortex will, right? So we can both ask the Cortex questions and put planned events into it. The Cortex then, as you can see, has cultural insight, consumer insight, media data, market context, business data, has everything in there. We have combined, we work with OMD for media, so we have a singular now. The Cortex is the singular marketing science intelligence engine for both agencies. So you can see media planning comes off there too. That then creates not one brief, 3 different types of briefs. We either have a micro, macro, or mega brief because we're operating around micro moments, macro stories, and mega trends. So you can't have one type of brief. It's a different function and a different way of an agency working in different modes. So we have 3 briefs. We have creative development. You see our channel plan. We execute. And then you see a closed loop of measurement that brings all that research and all the results and impact back into the intelligence center. So our intelligence center is constantly improving, constantly. The piece down the bottom, which is very critical, is our production capabilities. McDonald's creates 7,500 pieces of content a year in the US. 7,500. You have to have very good production capabilities to do 7,500 pieces of content. So we have offshoring, we have in-house, we have multiple distribution channels as far as our production goes. I think the other question that McDonald's had for us was about creating a standalone agency. One of the questions a client may have for you is, well, I don't want to be an island, right? I kind of like to rub shoulders with a State Farm or the other guys, and I think that inherently that there's a capability increase and improvement when I can do that. True. So what we did was we created a 70-20-10 model on capability and talent. 70% of the capability and the talent at Unlimited is fixed. They are on site and they come to work every day. 20% are tethered back at the agencies that you see down the side. So we have full-time talent working and sitting still at Anelect or sitting still at Sparks and Honey or sitting at Alma or any of our partner agencies. They're 100% committed to McDonald's, but they bring in the flow and the fluidity and the model that makes sure we're constantly bringing in new capabilities, and we haven't built an island of just one client. And then 10% we call our hired guns and specialists. So if we're going to do a gaming mechanic, we can go hire a bunch of gamers, and that's all in the scope, right? So we leave ourselves some flexibility to go get those hired guns and specialists when we do it, and not have to have constant incremental asks to our clients, which drives clients crazy if you haven't got the message. I'm here as a former client. Don't incremental scope your clients. Try to work everything as much as you can, right? So that's a little bit about McDonald's. Before I leave, I wanted to just offer you a final thought, because so much of what I've talked about today is about the what. It's what we do, and what is so important, right? And what has to evolve, and what has to get better. But there's another piece that we've got to remember as this ecosystem of marketers, that how is equally important. And if you're going to succeed in a good, fast, and efficient world, you absolutely have to have collaboration. You can't move fast if you don't know how to collaborate. You can't move in an integrated, efficient sense if you don't know how to collaborate. And so collaboration is now mandatory. All of our reviews at DDB are now equally graded on what's and how's. What do you do, and how do you go about your job? Because quite frankly, in the industry, particularly in the agency side of the industry, we've been known for bad behavior. Let's just be honest. Right? We have tolerated bad behavior for talent. Well, you can't tolerate bad behavior if it stands in the way of collaboration, and collaboration is absolutely the root of the two of the macros in the marketplace, being speed and efficiency. So we are very focused on the house. I'm going to leave you with one final thing from Sun Tzu, who says that there are 5 core traits of a successful leader. 5 core traits. Being brave, being caring, being disciplined, being smart, being trustworthy. Brave, caring, disciplined, smart, and trustworthy. To me, these are the roots of successful house. Are you brave enough? Do you care enough? Are you disciplined enough? Are you smart enough? That's somewhat genetic. And are you trustworthy? These 5 have never failed me. And we are driving these through DDB because these are going to be the 5 ways that you can bank on us and how we will behave and how we will bring great house. So what's in house as a final thought? And with that, I think I have exactly 2 minutes and 1 second for questions. Thank you. Who's going to be brave enough? Scott asked you to be brave. I said brave. You've got a theme going already. Anyone got a question? Got time for one. Right here, right here, right here. Someone's got a hand up. What was the hardest thing about implementing the change? My old boss at Coke, Joe Tripodi, has a great quote. If you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance even less. Actually, I have to say, for 15 months at DDB, I have felt only a pull and never a push. I think everyone knows that we have to change. Otherwise, we will stare down irrelevance. And so I have felt very, very little resistance to change. I think probably, if anything, from my own perspective, I felt like I potentially am not running fast enough. I feel like we need to go faster. I think the one thing I would say is if you're considering doing this with any of your clients, you have to make sure that there is a commensurate ambition on your client side. Because we can build Maseratis and Ferraris, but if they really just want a Kia, then you've overbuilt, and then you become expensive, and then you get frustrated with each other, and it doesn't work out. And we saw a commensurate desire for change on McDonald's side, which allowed us to take this sort of massive shift in change. And then last week, we just announced that, after meeting with our ConAgra client, they are now going to go this way. I think we are going to very quickly, we're not at an inflection point yet, but I think by the end of this year, you're going to start to see an inflection point of clients understanding, knowing they have got to shift to a very different way of working. And with that, I'm going to leave. Thank you, guys.